And the session will be hosted by our friend Sven Korschinowski. He's a partner at KPMG and responsible for digital transformation of banking. And he will introduce you to the panelists, and I'm very excited for this section. So please help me welcome Sven Korschinowski. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, good afternoon. I think it's one of the latest panelists we've here. Nice to have you here. We have a great audience today. We want to talk about a very specific use case in blockchain, KYC. So the KYC process the banks have when you want to open an account, you as a person or as a corporate. So it's a mess when you see those types of processes. And what we're looking today, if it's really a use case which is sensible in order to apply that technology. And we have a great panel, nice panelist from Germany, but from other countries too. And please welcome with me Sebastian Kraft, Commerzbank. Big applause.
Thank you.
Hi, Sebastian.
Hi, Sven.
Yeah, have a seat.
Perfect.
So Sebastian is from Commerzbank, from the DLT team, the distributed ledger. I think you have many people now in that team, 15, 16 more people. Yeah. And Sebastian is dealing on very specific use cases in payments, in trade, in foreign exchange, and for sure KYC and ID. And we are curious to hear and to see what you're doing. Thank you and welcome here.
Thank you.
So the next I would like to introduce is Oliver Nägler. Big applause too. Hi, Oliver. Have a seat. Oliver is from Frankfurt, and he's running the fintech headquarters in Frankfurt, one of the earliest fintech people, communities you've built up in that region. He's running, maybe you can talk about it, the Orange ICO, maybe we'll talk about that, and for sure blockchain Helix, and I think it's one of the topics we see because you're dealing a lot with ID and identification and KYC, and it's very interesting to see how it could really work in real life. So, and then the next one is I'm very pleased to welcome here TechU here. Big applause.
Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
Please take a seat. And I'm really pleased because TechU came over from Singapore. He's working KPMG Singapore. And they're really doing a lot of stuff and working on concrete solution. And maybe you will tell us a little bit what you're doing in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, and about ID KYC might be of interest. So happy to have a nice panel here. And the idea was to choose a use case because you see a lot of blockchain stuff. It's really high level, it's not concrete. And we thought, what is the real problem? When you open your account, as I said, you need a lot of paperwork in order to do that, in order to be identified. Even worse is when you're a corporate. You have the same account, same bank, and you have to apply for the data, for the documents, and it's always the same. For that reason, I would like to start on this topic. However, to give the panelists the opportunity to talk a little bit about what you're doing. Maybe may I start with you, Sebastian. What are the use cases and stuff in DLT and blockchain you're working at that moment?
Yeah, I can give you an insight there. So first of all, thank you for the brief introduction. Commerzbank is quite active already in the blockchain case. We started our work end of 2015, early 2016, and we have, as you already said, quite a huge lab. What we do is we build use cases, of course, for the financial sector, and with a strong focus on corporate banking at the moment. So we have trade finance use cases. There are 2 platforms where we are actively involved in. We are doing securities transactions. So we had the worldwide first issuance of Euro commercial paper on blockchain. And we recently also did stuff like foreign exchange forward contracts, which we built on blockchain. So what we didn't do until now is indeed KYC. And I think this is one of the most important topics which come next. And so I'm very happy to sit here.
So for Commerzbank, you say blockchain is an important technology, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. So we as Commerzbank, we have a strategy which can be described as being simple, efficient, and digital. One thing which we do within this strategy is to look at emerging technologies like AI, big data, whatever, and also blockchain, of course. And blockchain is one of the technologies where we believe this is game-changing for the financial industry. And that's why we decided to start very, very early and to put so many effort and so many FTE also onto this topic.
May I ask a silly question? One of the topics and the characteristic of blockchain is you will delete the intermediary.
Yeah.
So you as a bank, you are one.
Yeah, indeed. So if you think about the original idea of Bitcoin or other things around, the idea is to kill out the intermediaries. But we as a bank also see opportunities while using private permission blockchains to, A, reduce our operational cost, B, kill our intermediaries, which we have in interbanking transactions as well, and C, also to increase revenues, because we think about building or being among the front runners in building blockchain platforms, and also being able to commercialize them then afterwards.
It's very interesting and hopefully promising for you as a bank. So maybe I'll go to Oliver, and I introduced you already that you're doing a lot, and I could continue. So you're working for the European Commission, there will be a blockchain workshop, you are in the Bundesverband Blockchain Association, and doing a lot of stuff, and you're doing something in blockchain. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit what you're doing with Blockchain Helix, and you're doing an ICO. Everybody's doing an ICO. Why are you too?
I don't think that everybody's doing an ICO, but there are a couple of ICOs right now, even in stealth mode, and we believe that there will be a huge amount of ICOs coming in the future. I'm doing quite a lot in blockchain. Was one of the first in the Rhine-Main area that somehow tried to build up a community, and right now in different groups, like 3,500 people already.
Wow.
Organizing the Blockchain Association Germany, and trying to solve certain things on the definition side of blockchain, because this is really important considering GDPR and blockchain. This is something where there's a lot of work to do, because this is something that is simply hindering innovation if we're not dealing in the right direction. On my own behalf, I'm running Blockchain Helix as the company that's we're dealing mainly with digital identity on a blockchain, and there we have the KYC, of course, as one of the key elements in it. It's like more, it's a process in between, but so the main idea is to store the identity in a very secure and immutable manner. And right now we're using the technology coming from Blockchain Helix in order to build up an ICO platform, to go over this chasm that we need to do all this KYC stuff for every ICO over and over again, and to simply have some kind of clear regulatory guidelines in it. So this is called Helix Orange, we're right now in. So it's a challenging time right now, but it's really exciting. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. What is the timeline of the ICO?
We're right now on the private sale. The public pre-sale will start on the 12th of July with a very interesting bonus. So everybody who's somehow into ICO, maybe want to invest like €100, this is where it starts, can approach me or go to our website. So I think it's a very interesting offer. Yeah.
Interesting.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Yes.
So maybe take you. So we talked with the bank first, Sebastian, Oliver. So some really practice here on the road, I would say, as a startup. You said when we talked that Singapore, we're coming from Singapore, aims to be the blockchain nation of the world. What does it mean? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think in Singapore, we started looking at blockchain from a payments perspective, right? So we have this thing called Project Ubin, which starts with local currency, central bank, central bank digital currency. We are now looking at a cross-border element of it. So the payment side will be done literally taking fiat currency and converting into crypto, but actually run by the government, right? So that's 100% back. With that, we then start to look at using that as an engine for trade finance as well, right? To do cross-border trade finance, but again with a settlement, almost a settlement coin at the back of it. But as the thinking goes on, we started to look at how we can use blockchain for all registries. So your personal info, so we've got something called My Info, where all our information, from, identity card number, birth date, your home address, telephone number, is all your personal identities with a registry with the government. But obviously that means single source of failure, right? So what the government wants to do is, all the registries will be put on blockchain, right? But it also means that any banks that need to tap the data, as long as they have permission from the customer, can actually extract the data, right? Consume the data straight from all this blockchain. So that has led us to start thinking about what can we do from a KYC perspective, right? So in Singapore, you look at KYC, the cost of KYC today is causing a couple of things. One is making banks turn away smaller customers, whether they're SMEs or individuals, because the cost of compliance is too high, right? And it's actually raising the cost of banking, because beyond the first customer acquisition piece, KYC regulations require to refresh the KYC every year or every other year. So banks keep having that cycle of recruiting more and more KYC compliance officers just to comply with it. And because Singapore is a financial capital, we have the likes of Commerzbank, HSBC, Citibank. So all the standards are actually not local standards. It's really your corporate headquarters standards. And that raises the cost of compliance in the country. So we look at KYC as a way to reduce costs, first of all through digitization, smart contracts and everything else, but secondly from the cost of duplication, right? So if you create a utility based on blockchain, anybody who's in the utility, the second bank doesn't need to do exactly what the first bank has done, right? So there's reliance on each other based on the trust.
That's very interesting. And when you say that today we have a lot of cost in that very tiny space of opening an account, this leads me to Sebastian and a question. Why should we talk about blockchain KYC? Maybe start first, maybe explain to the audience what is KYC, what are the main issues when we talk about there's a cost too high, there's too much work maybe. So may you describe a little bit what is today's process and why should we then in the next question talk about using it for blockchain? What is the issue?
Let me maybe answer it from another perspective if it's okay for you. So
sure.
Let me answer this question from a blockchain perspective. If we want to digitize the economy using blockchain technology, we need to digitize contracts. And digitizing contracts is twofold. First of all, digitizing the paper. Secondly, digitizing the signer. And given all the blockchain hype which we saw the recent years, digitizing the paper is already quite well processed. Digitizing the signer, not. So what I see is we don't have any reliable solution active at the use cases I see at the moment, which enables us to identify in a safely way who is the actor on the blockchain solution. But what I see also is that a lot of use cases and a lot of banks and other consortia now realize that this is the next thing we have to think about it, and so I'm pretty sure that this is going to be the next hot topic for blockchain use cases. When talking about the issues, or let me talk about the benefits, it's quite obvious, like no redundant data anymore, like higher security and also convenience. So we already heard a little bit about KYC for corporates. You said it when you introduced the round. When you want to open an account as a corporate, you have to, I don't know, answer 300 or 350 questions at bank A, and then you go to bank B, and then you have to answer 360 questions, almost the same than the other ones. And this is something that is really, really inconvenient. And even if you have to change some data, you're not even sure which data you have to change at which bank. So this is a very important thing.
You look quite in favor to adopt that use case and go further. Yeah. However, when I see in the audience, normal people do not understand KYC, that's a bank term. Yeah. We see when we look on the adoption rate of technology, not many people do understand what is blockchain, what is the technology. How should I, as a personal individual, when I open an account, use blockchain? I don't understand that. Maybe some younger people will, or the tech guys in that group, but the main people would never use technology. So how can I imagine using blockchain when opening an account?
Okay, so when you talk about a private person, so ID management on blockchain, there's one famous sentence, technology has either to be beautiful or invisible. So in this case, it should be completely invisible for you. So you should simply see, okay, I only have to give the data which represent my identity, so-called claims like my name, my address, whatever, the number of my ID, only once. And I have the full transparency of who I gave the data and who am I willing to give the data and from whom am I willing to withdraw the data. And this simply in a fancy app that you can use, but not even knowing that you use blockchain technology. That's at least something which I would see as the future picture of it. But I'm not sure, Oliver, I'm pretty sure you have there your vision as well.
I think that's the point. Yeah, I think what are the solutions? What is the vision and the solutions? Make it concrete.
He just did a perfect pitch for blockchain Helix. So thank you very
You're
much
welcome.
for this. So the main idea
that was
here,
not prepared.
No, it was unprepared. So the main idea here is really to have some kind of mind shift. Yeah. So coming from Web 2.0, it's more that we have all the different organizations that store personal information. And with blockchain technology, we can simply get it to another mindset and get the user in the centric, and then he has complete control over his data. So this is mainly what blockchain Helix is about. And then you have verifiable claims. This is like a technical term as well. But I mean, blockchain itself is simply an underlying technology, so it's nothing that normal people should somehow think about. So it's something that's, as you described, is invisible. But the main thing here is something that comes into mind when we call blockchain is trust, right? And this is something that is adding really an elementary value to data, that we have a trust center. We call this a high secure anchor point as well. And this is what blockchain is about. And so if you store your data on your behalf, on your own behalf, and then give allowance to all these different parties, only on the principle of minimalization, that you give for instance, for opening a bank account, certain information. For any kind of e-commerce, you only need to give your address. So this is something that is mainly the spirit of GDPR, that meant to be very good from the beginning, but has certain challenges if we talk about how we need to deal with personal data. Yeah, this is something that really is important.
I think we come back on this GDPR stuff. Sure. So you say you have a solution, blockchain Helix, maybe others are on the market. That means, would you be the new intermediary replacing Sebastian? Or how can I imagine that?
I wouldn't call myself an intermediate. It is more that we're trying to span up a consortium. I think that, as you already said, the future will be permissioned blockchain where we have consortia in it, where we do not deal with mining and all this stuff that is somehow, as we talked before, energy consumption a lot. So we have an added value. It's coming more from the top, incentivization, everything. And then there will be not only blockchain Helix, of course. I hope we will play a role, but there will be a lot of different identity providers. This is something that is, even with portability and interoperability, something that's really important. But the main idea is simply that you have the choice to use different identity providers and then use it for whatever purpose you need it for your own. So this is, I think we have a very good product for this. Yeah. Of course, digital identity is something, it's always in early stages, so there's still work to do, but I think it's really future, and this is mainly, if you're thinking about GDPR, how to handle with it, you come back to blockchain.
Do we already have in Germany, on Europe, blockchain-based KYC process somewhere?
The KYC process itself is not blockchain-based, never, because this is something...
Which part of the KYC would be blockchain-based?
The main idea behind blockchain is that you have a high secure data storage that everybody can trust in terms of consents. You know, so this is a process where you simply have over-the-counter an identification process, or you're using video identification, or you're using EID. It's something that's taking more time, of course, but the KYC process itself has nothing to do with blockchain, but it is described as a solution that is based on blockchain, as we simply need a point in time that we simply record a truth that everybody can rely on.
So the data you grab from the cloud. Yeah.
Some people say garbage in, garbage out, so you always need a clear entity that is able to simply identify a person in a legal manner, and then you have a certain trust level that you can build up any kind of economy, any kind of society, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe Tekio, you can elaborate a little bit on a practice use case. You have done something in Singapore for some banks. You might not name them, but you could describe a little bit. And you're doing something in Bahrain, Abu Dhabi for that moment. Tell a little bit about the different markets. What are they doing? And then what could we in Germany and Europe learn from you?
So I think to Oliver's point, I don't think it's the technology that's the issue, right? You have to actually agree on the business model, the consortium to play with. So the conversations we have been having in Singapore, the Association of Banks will form a KYC utility, right? And the whole idea is to take duplication out of the system. So you have open accounts with, one of the 6 leading banks there. So there are people who contribute data and people who consume data, right? The ones who contribute into it are the 6 largest banks, which will take probably 100% of the individual market and probably 80-90% of the corporate market anyway.
And maybe just one question: Can you understand everything? Because sometimes connection in that big audience. Can you hear?
Can you hear behind?
Everything it's okay? Excellent.
So that consortium is a KYC utility consortium, right? It is now being designed to be run on blockchain, right? But with connections into the Singapore digital registry. So my info will feed data. So all I need from an individual is just show me your identity card number. I will scan, right? It will go into the system. It will pull the data from the government. So everything gets updated that way, right? And if you do that, you don't have to, you don't have to keep copies of the identity card in each and every bank, right? So that is one way to start looking at it. And it will also tag to the corporate registry so that if you are a director and we know your identity card number, all these things will be updated at the same time. So that's the Singapore model, right? But it needs a...
Is the model live yet? Or?
The model is not live. The model has been announced, it's not live. So the first, it's supposed to go live this year.
Okay.
Right? Separately, we did a proof of concept with 3 of the largest banks there, just to look at blockchain for KYC, right? So that has been done, in precursor to this bigger utility. So the POC solves a technical view. Can it be done? Does the volume allow for blockchain to have enough of a pipe to go through and everything else? We did the security testing, everything else. Right? Once that's done, the now question is when the utility is formed, right? The business model and the commercial model around the utility is agreed. We can then put it onto the blockchain, right? So there are two pieces that going together. In the Middle East, we are looking at one of the countries. So in the Middle East, I presented the same concept to a panel of 12 central bankers, right? The whole GCC, 12 countries came together. We did a presentation. So in the GCC, the idea is if every country in the GCC runs a similar utility, you can actually then start sharing. That means if you open an account in Abu Dhabi and you want to go to Bahrain and open an account.
So you mean from country to country?
Yep.
Okay.
Right? So that is the big play for them, but it has to be government-led, right? So in one of those countries, they say that instead of forming a consortium of banks, they are asking the existing central, the credit bureau, which is actually run by the central bank, to be the utility body, right? So, apart from being credit as a service, right? Credit rating as a service, they now do KYC as a service on top of that, right? Again, that will be on blockchain. So I think when you start looking at some of this, you have to figure out what the consortium will look like. There are some natural consortium owners already, but in some other cases, you have to build, right? So in South America, we had a conversation with a bank who wants to build a KYC utility for their customers. Right, so today law firms, accounting firms, you could be a retailer, you could be a payment company, you could be an auto financing company. You need KYC, right? And the highest standard of KYC is actually at the banks. So if the banks do it and then say to their customers, you can tap on my KYC platform, right? If your customer bank with us, right? So the way for them is to sell the idea that if your customer isn't banking with us, they should bank with us.
Okay.
Right? So you acquire customers that way. So.
I was saying that KYC is not in the process of it is a solution. You see, you have different layers in between, but of course it is one solution that you simply build.
Yeah.
So it's from a technical point of view, there's always a certain different elements that you combine to have a solution. So this is why I'm agree that it's a solution itself.
But could that be what Tech you were just saying, a solution for Germany too? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's simply mainly a thing that the different banks simply have a liability contract in between each other. That's about it. That's all you need. So it could be doable very easily. I mean, Canada is doing this for quite a while. Singapore is building this up. In Holland, we have this right now. So the big banks simply have a different contract that they trust each other. That this data simply has a certain certain liability in between. Absolutely, and it's not such a huge cost save. It's really a cost save of billions of euros. It's really it's really stupid from the banks not to go into there more with the pressure.
But Sebastian wants to go there. He just said.
Yeah,
he's my man.
I'm pretty
right
sure. So the signals which I get from the consortia we are working in are going exactly into this direction, because it's not only reducing our operational costs, but it's also, of course, reducing our regulatory risk. Yeah. So if you so we all know the regulation is rising and rising with regards to KYC and anti-money laundering, and if there are breaches, there are really, really high penalties, and we don't want to pay these penalties anymore. So this is the second thing why we are very eager to implement such a thing.
And that's a possibility to combine both the regulatory burden you have often with the technology which might be promising in order to solve that problem.
Yeah, and because we are working on other use cases as well, and we want to have the ID management on a blockchain technology as well. Honestly, you could also think about having a central utility, not on blockchain, providing this ID management, but that's not so funny. So.
That's often the question, why do I need blockchain in order to solve it?
Yeah.
But when you hear what TechU is saying on the Singapore and Abu Dhabi use case, what are, from your perspective, the impediments in order to implement a similar process in Germany?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to apologize because it's really hard to understand you here. I don't know why.
Echo. Yeah, that was the reason why I asked, because you're right here.
Okay, so what has to happen that we can make it real? So first of all, I think one of the most important things is to agree on standards. Yeah, we need a harmonized way of gathering data, which sources are reliable. So all the banks which want to go onto one platform has to agree upon this, and this is. Not too little problem, because although every bank is facing the same regulation, they're all doing the process a little bit another way, and banks are not really willing to change their processes normally. So this is the standardization. This is one of the most important things for me. And then, of course, again, regulation, like a regulation on data protection, bank secrecy, using cloud services, and so on and so forth. So if I would have to mention 2 points, then I would say it's the regulation and the standardization.
Regulation, and you were talking, Oliver, already on GDPR. Is GDPR an obstacle in order to implement it?
I mean, GDPR is something, it was like, it's more than 8 years old that it was planned. At this point, nobody thought about distributed systems and blockchain, so this is something. If they would have done so, it would have been much easier. So right
regulation
now,
follows always technology.
Yeah, the problem is mainly with the definition. Yeah, I mean, if you think about a distributed system and you think about different nodes that are actually processing data, you need to think about if they're processing personal data, so they're falling under the rules of GDPR, or if it's simply an infrastructure, as you have with routers and whatever you have in the internet anyhow. So this is something, should need to be some clearance, and there's a lot of insecurity right now for all the different companies coming from GDPR. I mean, the idea of GDPR is really brilliant, but what we see right now, you're getting newsletters from all over the world telling you that you have to do something, and there's it's really weird right now.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But this is something that goes through all the different industries right now, and to have a clear view is something that the European Commission is even trying to get on their own right now, because right now they're building an observatory forum that we're dealing with, and they're trying to somehow think of a way to adopt this. It's somehow weird to understand, but this is the way it is.
Yeah, and what we've seen that in other destinations, the regulatory staff are working actively, and Abu Dhabi is a good example. Maybe we'll enlarge as the last point to discuss, the discussion from KYC, which is a very specific process in the bank. We enlarge it to identity management. We've seen a lot in Germany. We have VeryMe and other initiatives. When we enlarge the topic on ID, so how could blockchain play a role on that? Not only the KYC process, but making it a little bit bigger. What do you see in Singapore?
So we are seeing, I said, the solution for KYC starts with the identity piece and then goes through to the end, right? So the identity piece, a lot of times we are looking at blockchain now, is to look at how we connect devices, data from devices onto the block, right? So the fact of using biometrics, your fingerprinting, your facial recognition, all these things, scanning passports, everything, all that gets captured and pumped into the block, right? So that is the first part of identity management. Then beyond that, then you go into the knowing your customer, whether he's on any blacklist, sanction list, right? That's the next phase. And again, the way they are looking at it is to build APIs to the Thomson Reuters World Check, the Bloomberg, and everything else. And again, that data is pulled in. So the ability of blockchain now to really take care of the digital layer, so that nobody actually has to physically go and do the scanning and the checking, right? Will actually shorten the process for customer onboarding, right? And the bigger plus to me is that when you do a refresh next year, if there's any change of address or change of passport number, that all gets captured automatically, and everybody gets to know about it. So that's the real value. But I think to the point of GDPR, I mean, what we are looking at is that the authorization to use the data still comes from the customer. So if you are going into the second bank and you tell the bank that I'm actually banking with Bank A as part of the utility, right? There's going to be a SMS to you asking you to confirm to Bank A that you're giving Bank A authorization to release the data, right? So that process still has to happen, right? The real issue with GDPR is the right to be forgotten, right? Once you're in blockchain, it's very hard to be forgotten, right? It's all the data is there. So you have to be very clear on how you do your permissioning in terms of data management.
What do you see in ID management in the broader perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we're targeting the ICO market because the regulation is not so high there, and this is why we're simply doing the ICO right now with Helix Orange, because we think that to have accredited investors and share this information in between all these different ICOs is something that is simply can be doable right now. It's a great business case anyhow. And the ID management itself, the right to be forgotten, or right of erasure, is something that can be doable pretty easily because you have always different stacks in between your physical layers. So, I mean, the blockchain itself is simply not a very good data base. So you simply need the blockchain as the source of trust. So you have any kind of truth that is in there. So you're using hashes and everything. And then you have encrypted databases around this. You need a highly secure infrastructure. This is what we're building up. And I believe that to have an ID management can foster innovation in such a way that we cannot think of right now. So I think it's really something that's missing. It's really a missing piece in IT technology anyhow.
Fostering the innovation, and I think this could be an opportunity for a bank when you lose a role as intermediary. And Sebastian, I know that's one of the topics you're dealing with. So what are your thoughts on ID?
So let me maybe give an insight into my personal feelings about ID management, because all the other stuff has already been said. But just one thing, I would be very, very happy if I would have a solution, maybe blockchain, I'm quite sure it will be blockchain, where I get back the sovereignty on my data. When I browse through the internet, and I see all the different services I'm using, typing in my different passwords and so on and so forth. And I don't know, I recently read that on average everybody has about 90 to 100 different accounts and identities somewhere in the internet, and I personally do not know anymore where I do have which data. So if there is a solution which could give me back the power on my data, I would be very happy.
And blockchain helps?
Blockchain would help there, of course, yeah.
Okay.
That would be the solution.
Very interesting discussion, and unfortunately we don't have many hours to continue on that because the practitioner is here. I would like to close with a question, and I will ask you to give a short answer, please. Starting with you, Sebastian, when we will see overall KYC process live in Germany? Quick answer, please.
Yeah, okay, quick answer is I do see a lot of activity. I'm quite sure that we are going to see first of proof of concepts end of 2018, beginning 2019, but it will definitely take still a couple of years until we see large-scale solutions there.
Okay, a little bit hesitant, but optimistic. Oliver?
Yeah. We want to introduce this in another market because we think that financial services has a lot with regulation, and they simply do not act fast enough for us. We're a startup. So we think that what we're doing with Helix Orange is something that we will introduce within 2018. So this is our roadmap, and I think this is something that is somehow can be a blueprint for other verticals actually.
Take you from the outside. What is your perspective? When could Germany be live on a KYC process? Not knowing that much the country.
I think the real benefit of all the blockchain things is that it's the perfect technology and platform to connect ecosystems, right? And you start thinking about trade ecosystems, right? Where you start looking at trade finance, trade moving between. Just think about China right now, right? The Belt Road Initiative, when it connects China to the ASEAN, from ASEAN to Europe and so on and so forth. That whole network of trade can best be connected with blockchain platforms, right? And that is where we see the real future. KYC is one element of it, but the real value is when trade documents can go on a blockchain, you can actually digitize everything, right? You can actually make payments on blockchain and not really have a situation where your trade finance and trade documentation is separate from the physical flow, right? Today, it's sometimes easier for the goods to arrive from Europe to Singapore faster than the documents arriving in clearing.
So in order to close, I see a lot of optimism here in the panelists. I think what we've seen is that we see already jurisdictions where we have a live KYC process. You named some KYC process in Singapore to be live, Abu Dhabi starting now, Dubai. So we have the examples. We see here the industry from the banks, from the startups, that they're willing to build something, and I'm optimistic too that we will see something, and I hope it will be maybe in 2019, 20, that we see the process. Thank you very much, thank you, Oliver and Sebastian, for your insights. Thank you very much for listening. Now I would like to close and to hand over to Alex, and Alex will make a brief summary of the blockchain day. Thank you.